Oh, okay. Chris Peaks back with Brandon Moseley for our BCS State of Alabama podcast, and we got GOP State Auditor candidate Derek Chen back here with us today. So, Derek, man, it's 2 weeks from today. I mean, how you feel?
Feel great, Christopher. We've just been working really hard all across the state, and our momentum has just been incredible. And I'm just so grateful to the people of Alabama for all of their hospitality and all of their kindness throughout my travels.
Derek, just for the audience who may be just trying to catch up on the election here at the last couple of weeks, could
Yeah.
you briefly describe what the Alabama State Auditor does?
Sure. The Alabama State Auditor has several functions, so it's a statewide constitutional office. So the main primary responsibility of the state auditor's office is property audits of state inventory. So anything that's physical property that is owned by a state agency worth $500 or more is kept track of by the state auditor's office. The auditor also appoints registrars in 66 of the 67 counties in our state, one exception being Jefferson County, and that is because of the way that Alabama law is written. Jefferson County appoints their own registrar through their own process, but for all other counties in our state, state auditor gets a registrar appointment. State auditor also sits on the State Board of Adjustments, and the State Board of Adjustments is a quasi judicial entity that is tasked with adjudicating claims against the state. So, according to our state constitution, you and are not allowed to go walk into a courthouse and sue the state of Alabama. So, say a highway department truck backs into your car and you have a legitimate claim, a valid claim against them. Where do you go? What's your recourse? And that's where the State Board of Adjustments comes in. It's a quasi judicial entity, so you're hearing evidence from both sides, and you're rendering a decision on claims made against the state. The state auditor also sits on the State Penny Trust Fund Board, and the State Penny Trust Fund Board is tasked with overseeing investments of public dollars on behalf of the taxpayers. So those are a lot of very important functions, but those functions are often overlooked and overshadowed by other constitutional offices. But the state auditor does very important work.
So, Derek, watching your ads, I mean, they're better than a lot of other people's ads out there. I mean, some of these ads they've had are crazy this year. But so you were endorsed by President Trump?
No, so the President Trump has not made an endorsement in my race. The my understanding is out of the statewide races in Alabama, the president has only made endorsements in the U.S. Senate race, the governor's race, and the lieutenant governor's race. He has not yet made an endorsement in any other offices, to the best of my knowledge.
Uh, Derek, could you briefly describe your history again for the viewers that may not be up to speed yet?
Yeah. My family background, the American-born son of legal immigrants from Taiwan who fled the threat of communist China. I came to Alabama to go to law school at Cumberland, the Cumberland School of Law, and just absolutely loved it and stayed. I also have my MBA from the University of Alabama. I'm a lifelong Republican and have been um, interested in and helped with, volunteered for many Republican campaigns. Was very fortunate to be able to volunteer for President Trump's first campaign when he ran for president for the first time. I've been a supporter of President Trump's since he first came down the escalator making his presidential announcement at Trump Tower in New York City. I was watching that speech, and I knew after listening to him speak that that was going to be the candidate that I was going to be voting for president. And so I've been supporter of President Trump all the way from the beginning since the 2016 primary cycle, and have been fortunate to have been able to help volunteer on his campaign during the first run. And I have been a staunch supporter of President Trump and his America First agenda ever since, and have been very fortunate to have been able to spend some time at Mar-a-Lago with the president, and I've just been a staunch supporter of President Trump.
So, Derek, I know first time we had you on, I asked you, was you an agent of the Chinese government? Because people had said that. I've noticed in your ads, you're hammering home that you're from Taiwan. Was that something that y'all ran by in focus groups, or was something you just wanted to reiterate to people that you were not from China?
Well, it's just I think it's really important for the voters to know a lot about the candidates and who they're voting for. I when you go and you put your name in for public office, I think it's really important that voters get to know you, because really what's going on is you're going through a campaign as a hiring process, right, Chris?
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm getting
Okay.
I'm getting there we go. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes,
you
sir.
fine.
So, a campaign is a hiring process, and so I think it's really important that folks know their candidates, and what their background is and what they stand for. And let's face it, I'm not your traditional candidate. In Alabama, and I think it's really important for folks to know, why I love this state so much, and why I love my country, the United States of America, so much. And lot of that, a large portion of that, is shaped by my family history and the stories, listening to my family members who escaped the threat of communist China and the threat of the CCP, why I value freedom and liberty so much. And I thought it was really important for folks to know that on the campaign.
When we spoke before, you talked about drones, and the state has drones, and you had a policy you wanted to implement about
Yes.
Chinese drones. Could you briefly go into that?
Yeah, so what's going on for your viewers? Many of your viewers have probably heard about this, or read about the Chinese drone phenomena that's going on in our country. So what's going on is China is heavily subsidizing Chinese-made drones, and they're being produced in China, shipped over to the U.S. and for American consumers to purchase. And if you go to the store and you take a look at a Chinese made drone or a American made drone, oftentimes the Chinese made drone is several times cheaper than their American made counterpart. And the reason behind that is China is heavily subsidizing their drone industry and drone production in China. And they're not doing so out of the kindness of their hearts. They're doing so because they want as many Americans to buy those Chinese made drones as humanly possible, because they want as many of those drones to be used in our country as possible, because then that data could then be transmitted back to China, which they could use against us. And I think that's a really big problem. As your next state auditor on day one, I plan to pursue a complete and total ban on Chinese-made drones and their component parts from the state's property inventory. So the auditor's office has jurisdiction over state agencies, and their property inventory, and that's what I plan to do. And something that I think is also really important to note with respect to the drone issue is that drones have a dual military and civilian purpose. So, you see in modern warfare, drones are often employed. And so when we as Americans are buying Chinese made drones, indirectly we're subsidizing the Chinese drone industry, their research and development. And that could one day be used against us should the United States and China get into a hot war. And I think that's a really, really big concern. President Trump's administration has put his focus really strongly on uh, increasing and supporting the domestic drone production in our country domestically. And I think it's really important that we try to do that on the state level as well.
So Derek, Alabama's had a past that we've had racial bigotry. What will this mean for the state's image to have the first Taiwanese American, or I guess minority for that matter, elected?
Well,
No, you've
Chris,
had other minorities.
Huh?
Well, there's been other minorities elected. This would be the first
State
Asian
statewide?
American I'm aware of to a
Statewide?
statewide position.
What are you talking about? Females being elected statewide?
I mean, we've had, well, maybe not statewide, but we
Yeah,
do
that's
have
what I mean.
two black
Yeah,
Congress
that's what I'm talking
members.
about. Statewide.
I know about elect. I know we've had black Supreme Court justices. The last one was appointed. I believe the Democrats did elect a black Supreme Court justice about 20 years ago. Derek, do you know about that?
I don't.
Okay. Again,
Anyway,
this is
anyway,
we're stretching because yeah. But I mean, he
anyway, go
would
ahead.
be the first Asian American.
Yeah, anyway, go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, so I think that I really am running on my merit, my experience, my life experience, my educational experience, my professional experience. And I think that it is I I hope folks don't choose to vote for me because of my race. I'm totally against that. I believe in picking the best person who's the most qualified person who believes in your values. And so I hope folks vote for me because they know that I'm going to work hard on their behalf, and I stand with their Alabama values and their conservative values. And I hope that folks vote for me because of what I bring to the table as an individual, and not because of my race. Because I'm totally against DEI, affirmative action type policies and mindsets. Because I believe as Americans, as American citizens, we should all be judged on what we bring to the table in terms of merit as individuals. And I really do, being able to travel throughout all 67 counties in our state. I really do believe our message is resonating with Alabamians, irrespective of race, because they know that I'm going to fight for their conservative Alabama values as their next state auditor. I think that folks can sense and tell on the campaign trail my passion for freedom and liberty, and how much I love this state. And I hope folks vote for me because of those reasons.
Derek, you are challenging incumbent state auditor Andrew Sorrell. Me and Christopher are aware that that was not originally your intent. That's sort of how things developed. For the voters that just are catching up on this auditor's rate, explain exactly how that happened.
Yeah, so I would correct you. I'm not challenging the incumbent state auditor. I'm not challenging anybody. I'm running for the position, and
Well,
and I'm
there
running for
is an
the
incumbent running. Is my point.
and I'm running for this position because I think that I would do the best job as your next state auditor. As you know, and as many of your viewers know, the incumbent state auditor announced back uh, early last year, calendar year 2025, that he was not going to be seeking reelection and he was going to be running for a different office. He was running for Secretary of State. Uh, and Shortly during the qualifying period, towards the very end towards the very end of the campaign cycle, once qualifying opened up, the incumbent switched races back to the state auditor's position. And so, I'm not challenging the incumbent, and I'm really not challenging anybody. I'm running for the position, and I'm running for the position because I think I'd be able to do the best job and be the most qualified as Alabama's next state auditor.
Derek, it's my understanding that, and if you don't want to answer this, understand that, Auditor Sorrell informed you that he would not run for that position again unless Wes Allen decided to run for re-election. How did that make you feel when you found out that he went back on his word?
Look, I think that Alabamians really expect a lot from their elected officials, and I think that Alabamians expect when their elected officials say something that they keep their word. And so, when stuff like this happens, I understand it's politics, but all I can do is focus on my campaign, and my message of government accountability and transparency and honesty to the people of Alabama. And that's really what I'm focused on doing. I'm focused on running my race and talking about our issues that are important to Republicans across the state of Alabama.
Um, Derek, there's not a third candidate. So the Republican primary is whoever has one more vote will be the nominee. But there is a Democrat that's qualified for this. So you're going to have to be able to defeat, assuming you're the nominee, you're going to be able to turn around and campaign all the way to November. You spent a lot of money and got a lot of ads and did a lot of campaigning. Do you think you're capable? I mean, how ready are you to then switch gears and go the long haul and win this seat outright?
Yeah, so I am very confident that come May 19th, we will be elected by the Republican voters of the state of Alabama to be the Republican nominee for state auditor. You're correct, there is a general election opponent, and we're fully prepared to campaign all the way through November and be successful as the Republican nominee for Alabama State Auditor.
So, Derek, I think you've got three ads now, or am I missing one? Do you have any more coming out, or you just stay with those three?
It's a possibility. We haven't fully decided what those. We have two ads currently, and
Two? Okay.
there may be more coming, but we haven't made a final decision on that yet.
For someone which would be 99% of the voters who have never run a statewide campaign, how difficult is it and how many different media markets are there in Alabama that you have to place ads so that, you're seeing the whole breadth of the state?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting. Alabama's media is a really interesting mix. So you have the Huntsville media market in North Alabama. You also have the Birmingham media market, which covers the vast majority of the central portion of our state. You also have the Montgomery media market, and you also have the Mobile media market, but a lot of the Mobile media market actually goes into the panhandle of Florida. You also have the Dothan media market in the Wiregrass that covers predominantly the Wiregrass regions of Alabama. But you also have the Columbus media market in Georgia, which comes into some counties of Alabama, and you also have the Columbus media market in Mississippi that also comes into portions of Alabama.
Derek, so I've seen you did like a lot of interviews with news stations. Do you
Mhm.
go on other podcasts like these?
I go to I've done several interviews and have been very privileged to have been interviewed by many different folks. But I always try to make it on your podcast as much as I possibly can.
Well, thanks.
Derek, when the average person hears auditor, we're thinking that they do audits, that they audit like government accounts and things, or an auditor. But that's not how it works in the state of Alabama. Could you explain a little bit the history of how we got where we are, where, the primary responsibility of the auditor is to do, property inventories?
You're correct, Brandon. So the state auditor's position in Alabama is in charge of doing property audits, so physical property. For financial audits, it's handled by a completely different entity, and that is called the Examiner of Public Accounts. And the examiner of public accounts is headed up by a chief examiner, and that individual is appointed by the Alabama legislature. So you have the examiners of public accounts, led by the chief examiner, which is appointed by the Alabama legislature that does financial audits for the state. And then you have the state auditor, which is the position that I'm running for, that is in charge of conducting property audits. And the state auditor is a statewide constitutional office elected directly by the people of Alabama.
Derek, I think you've been to all 67 counties. You seem to be having a lot of fun on the campaign trail. What is it you like most about it?
I really do. I just I probably shouldn't admit this, but I'm kind of jealous of folks that are gonna have runoffs because I just want to keep campaigning because I love it so much. But I think the primary reason why I enjoy it so much is because I just really enjoy getting to meet the great people across our state. I really care about them, and I want to do everything that I can to help make their lives better. Affordability is a really important issue for a lot of Alabamians, and I think we need to really address that on the state level, and I'm committed to doing so to combat inflation and make life more affordable for Alabama families. And I just really care for my fellow Alabamians, and I enjoy getting to visit with them across the state.
With, state property, there's, you as the auditor, you discover, hopefully everything at the office is there, but sometimes it's not.
Correct.
Sometimes stuff can get destroyed. Honestly, they had a fire or a hurricane, and sometimes stuff get honestly lost where we don't really know where that shovel went.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes stuff gets stolen. I've talked to the current auditor and, his predecessor, and both of them thought there needs to be an apparatus in there where the auditor identifies actual theft, and sometimes even the person responsible for the theft. And yet, you're really at the mercy of a district attorney or the AG's office to actually file charges, to try to get some sort of compensation or criminal penalties on the person responsible.
Correct. So the way that the system is set up currently is the state auditor is in charge of conducting the audits, and if there is missing property, look, folks make mistakes. We're human beings. We all make mistakes. But what the problem is when you have negligence, and you might have something even more nefarious where folks are stealing property, like you talked about, and those need to be put into consideration from prosecution. And I think it's really important that the auditor's office has a good working relationship with law enforcement to make sure negligence and malicious intent is prosecuted with respect to state property.
Derek, can you give us some examples of the state property that you audit?
Yeah, so you think about computers, desks, um, sidearms used by the state troopers, anything that's worth $500 or more, that is physical property is kept track of by the state auditor's office. So not real property, so not real estate, but physical property.
Derek, we've had a lot of concern since the 2020 election with election security. And historically, there's been some counties, I don't want to throw stones at anyone, but, where some of us had some doubts about some of the county results. That's less of a factor now than it was historically. But the auditor appoints one of the board of registrars. How confident are you that you can appoint, that your 66 appointees, you know, will, take it, their responsibility and our election seriously?
I'm very confident, Brandon, because I am a strong believer in vetting. We have to vet applicants for the registrar's positions very strongly on the front end. The way that the statute is set up is once the auditor makes the appointment for the board of registrars, and for your viewers that not may not be familiar with what registrars are, the registrars are the officials authorized by Alabama law to add or remove anybody from the voter rolls. So oftentimes people think that the Secretary of State's office is in charge of maintaining the voter rolls, but that's actually not the case. In Alabama, the registrars in each of our counties have that responsibility. So it's really important that you get competent and qualified constitutional conservatives that believe in the rule of law and believe in election integrity and believe that only eligible U.S. citizens who are residents of the state of Alabama should ever be allowed to vote in Alabama's elections. Period. And in order to get those applicants for these registrars position, it's really important that we do vetting very strongly on the front end, because the way that the law is set up is once the auditor makes that appointment, um, the auditor does not have the authority to later remove that person in the middle of the term. The only person after the appointment has been made that can remove a registrar is the Alabama Secretary of State for cause. And so that's why I am committed to vetting our applicants for these registrar positions very strongly on the front end to make sure that they're qualified and competent folks that are ready to serve their fellow citizens in their respective counties.
Derek, is there certain qualifications to be a registrar, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of talk about, implementing, basic technical competence requirements for the registrar's positions. Historically, you would have registrars that may not really know how to use basic computer skills. And so I think a lot of it is the judgment of the appointing authority. And as one of the appointing authorities for the registrar's positions, if I'm so fortunate to be elected as Alabama's next state auditor, I want to make sure everybody who I appoint as your state auditor is going to be competent and qualified and able to do the job effectively.
I've covered the legislature and state government now for, almost 20 years. And I
Hmm.
remember when the auditors had an office in the basement of the current Alabama State House. Then
Hmm.
they got kicked out of the State House. And then they moved over into the same RSA building where the Alabama Ethics Commission has their offices.
Hmm.
And then I think the current Secretary of Auditor was able to find them new digs in the existing state capitol. Um, where are we in the housing of the auditor has his office. but of the staff, where are they, or are they, is that in flux?
Yeah, so the career employees of the auditor's office is housed in the state capitol, and they have office space in the state capitol. Historically, they have been renting space in other buildings, like you mentioned, the RSA building, and a big part of that has to do with the historical conflict between the legislature and the auditors. And so I think it's really important that we make sure that our career employees for the auditor's office is housed in a central location in the Capitol, so that they can all be in one location, and you're saving the taxpayers money, not having to rent office space at another government building such as RSA.
Derek, if you find out somebody has been stealing state property, what's the next recourse? Do you turn it over to the attorney general's office or the local county where it was stolen from, or how's that work?
So you conduct the audit, and if it's discovered that folks are either misusing or stealing state property, you would write up a report, put it into a file, and send it over to either the Attorney General of Alabama, or the local district attorneys in the jurisdiction that that crime was allegedly committed in. But I want to go even a step further, and have an open line of communication with law enforcement and work with law enforcement to ensure that these cases are prosecuted if there is determined to be criminal malfeasance. Because at the end of the day, all of the state's property does not belong to any single individual. It doesn't belong to any bureaucrat. Doesn't belong to any politician. It belongs to the people of Alabama, and we need to take the theft of our taxpayer resources very, very seriously. And I'm committed to going after folks who are stealing from the taxpayers. Is what they would be doing.
Derek, the state auditor's office is a constitutional office, which means when they did the 1901 Constitution, it said that we had to have a state auditor. It creates the position. Now, Senators, Andrew Jones and Senator Greg Albritton at various times have introduced legislation, basically a state constitutional amendment to abolish the state auditor and send its authorities to the examiner of public accounts, which, you know, um, previously was the auditor's responsibility, but was seized by the legislature in 1939. Do you think you have a good enough working relationship with Alabama legislature that you can keep them from shutting your office down?
Yeah, I do, and here's the thing with respect to that is it is a constitutional office like you were talking about, and the state auditor's position is established in the 1901 Alabama Constitution, and so in order to abolish the office, it requires a constitutional amendment, and the procedure for the constitutional amendment is, you would have to get a supermajority of both houses of the Alabama legislature, so the House and the Senate. Once you get a supermajority, then it gets placed on the ballot for your voters to decide at the ballot box whether or not they want to keep the auditor's office or abolish the auditor's office. I think that the auditor's office is a government accountability office, and it's really important that we protect, and not only protect, but protect and strengthen government accountability offices, because we want to make sure that the state government is working for the people, and they're doing a good job for the people of Alabama.
Derek, do you think the state auditor's duty should be expanded to like a Doge type office?
Yeah, I do. I think that President Trump has put a lot of focus on cutting waste, fraud, and abuse on the federal level. His team has been very aggressively combating waste, fraud, and abuse on the federal level, and I think we need to do that on the state level as well.
Derek, we've had you on for nearly 45 minutes. I think I've asked everything that I probably need to ask. Is there something you'd like to add before we go, unless you've got something, Christopher?
No, that's all I had.
Well, I just want to thank y'all for letting me join your podcast. And I just really want to say thank you to the people of Alabama. I've been campaigning for this position nonstop for over a year. And I've just been so grateful to have been able to crisscross the state, all parts of our state, and have gotten to meet wonderful people. And I just want to thank the people of this state for their hospitality. But I need your help. I need you to vote on May 19th in the Republican primary for Derek Chen. I'm running for state auditor. And I'd like to ask y'all for your vote. And I would be so grateful to be your next Republican Alabama State Auditor.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Derek. Good
much
luck
for
on May
being on,
19th.
Derek.
Thank you very much.